So welcome to our deep dive for Parasha Vayetze, and it's a action-packed Parasha with lots of stories in there, beautiful stories, predominantly about Rachel and Leah, and the whole Parasha is about them giving birth to the 11 of the 12 tribes, and but there are beautiful stories in there, and ones that are difficult to understand on face value, and I'm just delighted to have Reva Emunah Seidel back with us and to give us really a deep perspective as to how to understand these Pesukim. So Reva, I wanted just to start, if we can. There are three real segments, and if we have time for a fourth, that would be great. Three real segments. The first one is, Rachel giving over the secret codes to Leah and the night of her wedding. I mean, how supernatural is that? What kind of strength does it take for a woman to do that?
Obviously supernatural strength, and I think strength born of a conviction that's so strong, of an overriding vision, that it even can elevate human nature. Like that's human nature, to be jealous, and then it's your sister. We know from everybody's family dynamics, even wonderful, healthy families. Do you want me to turn it your way? We're going to see this again and again in this parasha. Yaakov is also undergoing a huge metamorphosis. Everybody's undergoing metamorphosis.
It's amazing. It's true. I never thought about it from Yaakov's point of view. What kind of metamorphosis do you think he's going through?
Okay, well, I think we can start at where he arrives, part 2, and then work our way backwards.
Okay.
His stepping into this new metamorphosis crystallizes on the night of, according to the Me'or Shemesh, Hod Shebehod, Lag BaOmer, the night when he has the showdown with the inner Esav, the outer Esav, right? And as a result of that whole process, journey, birthing of consciousness, he steps into Yisrael. It doesn't always last also. We fall back. You notice in the Psukim, he's Yisrael, and then what? Yaakov again. Right? Which we know is so familiar. Yeah.
Interesting. But so she does that, and the Alshech doesn't seem to say very much about that I saw. But if we go straight to the bit that really caught my mind, and that is that, after Leah gives birth to 4 children, and Rachel is still barren, and she comes to her husband Yaakov and she says, "Please give me kids, otherwise I'm going to die." I mean, and Yaakov's response is so. It seems so insensitive. Who am I? Am I God? That the power of birth is in my hand? And when we read this, we think, gosh, that it can't be the face value. It has to be much deeper thing.
I hope so.
Yeah. So what's your take on Rachel's being at the time? This passion to give birth to some of the 12 tribes and finding herself barren.
Well, as an overview, I would say we're in a tkufa, a time right now, where we're dealing with dreams, our personal dreams, the dimyonot or delusions, illusions, or shattering of those dreams. And then what does it look like to put the pieces back together in Hashem's dream, right? With our dream in alignment. Yeah? I mean, just going back to what we were saying about metamorphosis, right? Everybody here is getting taken apart
breaking down before the build-up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody through. So specifically about Rachel and children. I can't speak for every woman. I can speak from my experience. But those were two core drives: the desire to find my partner and my husband, and just really step into the levushin, or the garments of being a wife, and having the experience of mothering. So I think, and again, I don't think that's true in the same way for every woman, but
The majority.
maybe it's true for everybody, and we're birthing different things, and we're experiencing. I don't know. But Yochi said something to me so profound this week. I was telling her a personal story, and she said, "Let's now tell the story, assuming benevolence of every character in the story." Those were not her exact words, but that was the vibe, right?
That's a great idea.
Right?
Yeah.
And like just assuming everybody in the story is only wanting the ultimate good for the other.
Right.
Wow, wouldn't that change that narrative? So we might even play with, I'm not saying I saw this inside, I'm saying let's play, right? Vayichal af, right?
You got upset.
We read it just, right? Maybe not. What if it was af, like, as in arich anpin? What if he was going, right?
Meditating.
And he was really feeling into what she's experiencing, and maybe he's even crying with her of like, I'm so frustrated. Halavai that the key was in my hand. But I'm not God. I'm not God.
Right.
I'm not God.
Right.
If I could, I'd give you 1,000 children.
Right.
Doesn't that change the narrative?
That's really nice. I like that idea of looking at characters in a benevolent way, because that's what the Alshech does. He kind of, as if he goes into the minds of the characters and shares with us what's going through their minds. And think, oh, that's what they were thinking. Yes, it is benevolent what they did. And it just came out in such a way that sounds, right, a little sharp to us. But once you look at it from a benevolent point of view, all the jigsaws fit in together perfectly.
Here's another level of benevolence. We were learning this today in the women's group about Abraham and the Kav Yarok. This initial holding of everything in Bina, in Chesed, and just Rachamim, right? So what if the benevolence was, he really did get mad at her. But this is a man who's learning how to become the integrated masculine. And he's going to fall out of it, and he's going to find his way back in. That to me is maybe even more benevolent, because it's so human.
Right.
It's so real.
Right.
Right? He can just be like, listen, I know you're in pain. You're asking me to step up in a way that's transforming and going to metamorphosize myself or whatever, right? And I'm trying. How many times have I heard that from men? I'm trying to be something bigger, but please have mercy on me.
Have patience.
Have patience.
What do you think of the Alshech's suggestion that Rachel felt that she was being punished? The Hashem was punishing her, and what for? Because of her role in switching wives. And Yaakov is saying to her amazing ideas. Firstly, it's not your mitzvah to have children, it's my mitzvah. And if Hashem was punishing anybody, he would be punishing me, not you. And the fact that I've had children means that there's no sin happened and you're not being punished. What's your view of that?
It sounds so weird, but it melted my heart. I loved it. I wouldn't put emphasis on the word punishment or onesh, even though I know that that's the word that the Alshech used. but I heard it more as somebody who is so tuned in and sensitive, right? That she's wondering if the reason that they're not having children is because somehow his heart cannot fully open to her because he's holding this.
He's holding this sort
And
of
it's right. So they're on one level they're panim el panim, they're face to face, and their will, their ratzon is aligned. But what she's intuiting is perhaps the reason that the channel is closed is that there's a block in the channel.
Right.
And I want to give him that opportunity.
I mean, I've heard from other sources, the idea that Rachel was saying to her, look, why don't you pray for me like your forefathers prayed for me? Like Yitzchak prayed for Rivka. And the sages said, yeah, but Yitzchak prayed when he didn't have children. I have children, so I can't pray with the same intensity as they did. So it seems like from Rachel's point of view, she's convinced that the blockage is from Yitzchak, from Yaakov rather. It seems to me that that's what's happening.
No, but we just said that she questions if the blockage is from herself.
Right.
So that's deepening into Hod. We start by it's the other person, they're the blockage. And she makes movement, as does Yaakov, as does Leah. Everyone's going to make this movement into meeting the inner blockage instead of projecting.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that originally she thought it was Yaakov's blocking, and then she concluded that it might be hers? Is that what you're saying?
That's how I read it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, okay. But I think from Yaakov's point of view, according to Alshech, he seems to think that there is no blockage from there. It's saying that it's in Hashem's hand, that we can't work out the reasons that Hashem is withholding. So it's not for us to work it out. And then we're left with this state of her being just having to be patient. And then we come to the next scene with the Dudaim. She's probably frustrated at that stage, and she's yearning for children, and she does this deal with Leah, which seems at first value really crazy. Give me some of your sons Dudaim, and Leah says, remarkably, well, not only have you taken your husband, now you're going to take my sons Dudaim. And Alshech said, what do you mean you're taking my husband? Rachel was the one that gave Yaakov as a husband to Leah. So how can she say, you've taken my husband? And he explains quite beautifully, I thought, that Yaakov had to spend an equal amount of nights, as it were, with each of the 4 wives. And because he had Rachamim on Rachel, not having children, he allocated more nights to her. And that's what Leah was saying. You're saying, you're taking my husband away from me. I'm not having my allocated nights because he's spending more time with you, because he's praying for you to have a baby. So we can understand that from Leah's perspective. But, the real issue I want to bring out in this episode is Bitachon. We said it's a masterclass in Bitachon. And it seems to me that Hashem is maneuvering all this for the sole reason to teach us and to teach Rachel what Bitachon is. Because there's always a question, to what extent do we as human beings are obliged to make our ishtadlut and to make an effort to solve things by going to doctors or therapies or that? And to what extent do we say, no, I'm not going to rely on any of that, I'm going to rely only on Hashem's healing? Ultimately, Hashem is the healer. There's nobody else that's healing. I mean, all the doctors are just shalechs of Hashem. So, to what extent we say, look, I don't want to go to the shiliach, I want to go straight to Hashem and trust in him. And it seems to me that Leah is convinced that, by giving the Dudaim to Rachel as an act of kindness, by giving her shivcha to Yaakov to show that it wasn't a question of her wanting to just spend the night, it was a question of her wanting to earnestly build up the 12 tribes, and that she would do anything it would take. And it seems from the Alshech that as a result of Rachel taking the Dudaim, Leah had 3 kids in that time. She had Issachar and I forget who came after Issachar, two boys, and then Dinah rather, which means that that Rachel was still yearning for children 3 years after she took the Dudaim. And Leah's conviction that she had Bitachon in Hashem was shown is that she gave all the Dudaim to Rachel, even though Rachel just asked for a few. So what I'm trying to bring out the lesson of Bitachon in our lives. What do you feel we can take away from this episode?
It's such a beautiful question. It's going to take me a moment to... Honestly, like I said, after preparing for so long, it hasn't quite landed even inside of me yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also still on the level of being with the questions to a large extent. But this level of bitachon, well, something that I kept hearing woven through the Alshech was this idea of when we don't feel that whatever this energy is called bitachon, it seems to move us into a state of al-mimiut, crookedness. Right? Like
we're trying to force our own
yes, we're trying
desire
to push it this way and then see if it doesn't go, then we'll push it back that, right? It starts to go crooked and off course, and he just seems to keep weaving through this idea of there's this kind of a peaceful shalem path of being like held inside the samech, slicha, held inside we could even call it the batal b'shishim, right? Held inside a space of it's many things. It's birkat kohanim, it's the protective energy of ahava and shalom from birkat kohanim. And when we're in that space, we kind of relax into netzach and hod, as in the signs of hashgacha pratit and bechira chofshit, right? Divine providence and free will. That's what we're working with in Kislev. We're working with, well, really, it started before, but right, we're working with how to work with netzach and hod, how to step into physical reality and physical life. And use these sort of 2 Urim v'Tumims, right? 2 oracles, right? One is to be aware of what's happening in your samech, in your space. Notice and see, that's interesting, that's a message, that popped out, the hashgacha pratit. And how do I activate my bechira, right? Together with this.
Yeah, I'm trying. If we could give a message out there to the world about on this question of Eshtadlut versus Bitachon.
Okay.
Where do you stand on this? For you, for example, where do you sit?
So it's so personal. One of my favorite Torot is and it's interesting that this is Rachel's son, so it's the continuation maybe of this birur, that they're so beautiful, they're so outwardly beautiful, right? As opposed to pnimi, right? They're also pnimi, but right, the olam of Isgalia, right? There's like this revealed beauty and chen and charm about them that it might even be harder for them to rely on God, because people are wanting to give to them, serve them, work 7 years for them, right? This sort of chen and charm, right? And dafka then through that line, we might even call it really, I think on some level, the line of the masculine, because it's so active, right? Yosef is so active, but in order to step into being that active, I have to understand that my actions and Hashem's plan may not be connected in the way that I think that they are. Is that making sense, kind of what I'm saying? So the classic example, and I love this, is Yosef's, right, saying, remember me to Paro.
That's right.
Right? And that seems such a kechuta se'ara, it's such a hair's breadth, like that seems so innocuous, like.
And he gets 2 more years in
Two
prison
more
for it.
years, right? But it's 2 more full cycles of refining to such a deep level your movements.
It's fascinating as you're talking, I'm noticing that Rachel had to wait 3 years of cycles before she was heard, and because she relied on the Judaim, and Yosef, her son, had 2 years of cycle because he relied on
I don't know if it's relying on the Judaim, like, because we can get a paycheck and on some level rely that will. I think it's really talking about an inner state of mind that can be manipulative or very stuck in control and very struck in like the machinations of how to move my will forward, right? My will. But that will can be very constricted, right? And even my spiritual dreams, this starts to get really interesting, because I might understand that my me physical dreams can be constricting me, but my spiritual dreams, that's my chukot, that's my gaguim, right? But what if they're also constricting? Like, and everybody's being asked to give up what they thought was the peak of the purpose of their life. 2 weeks ago, you mentioned something about the mission, and it's just once again like, what's happening here, right? And if we keep taking it back into, and you asked like kind of, how do I ground this practically for people who are watching this podcast? Right. So if we keep coming back to the awareness of what are we moving forward here? Am I moving forward my vision, my will, right? Or am I moving forward am I understanding that in every moment, in every situation, what's happening in me is that I'm growing consciousness. I'm growing more aware, either by descending, and then I'm going to reintegrate that experience, or elevating, but every minute, everything that's happening to me is an invitation to grow consciousness. That starts to, again, change the position in the circle of what's happening here in the space. That's the trust. The trust isn't, in the end, God's going to do it my way, right? Because some of us, I've been there many times, enter Emunah and Bitachon as, don't worry, in the end I'm going to get what I want. Right? And it sounds
right,
like,
God.
it sounds like your mom is cute, you know? Your mom is cute, but it's going to get a little deeper and more real than that, you know?
My biggest takeaway actually from all of this was the midrash that the Alshech brings. I think it was the Gomorrah actually, that when the Beit Mikdash was destroyed, Avram tried to persuade God to pardon the Jewish people. Didn't succeed. Yitzchak tried. Moshe tried. Everybody tried. Nobody succeeded to calm Hashem except for Rachel. And she says that just as I subdued my natural yearning for jealousy for my husband, please you subdue your natural your din, your judgment, and forgive the Bnei Israel. And her prayer was accepted. And the Alshech suggests that all these stories were manipulated in order that Rachel faces that test, so that later on the Jewish people could be saved because of the test that she's gone through. And I'm thinking, as I'm reading all these stories, how incredible it is that we're all faced with tests and challenges. And at the moment that we're facing the test, we might not feel that it's justified. Why am I having this test thrown upon me? What did I do to justify this test? But if we took a step back and understood the universes that are being created in the future because of my being able to overcome this test, we would take a totally different attitude. Well, what's your feeling on that?
It definitely feels very resonant to feel into the ripples across time and space. I've had that experience in my life, absolutely. would say again, in all of these stories, I hear this thread of what's actually happening under all the circumstances is learning to have compassion on what the other is experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Not just my own pain, but what the other is experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And from each one of them, right? That's what starts to finally create a possibility of new movement and new connection, but not at the expense of self either. It's something beautiful that they seem to, again, have that awareness and space of their own chisaron or lack, we could say, right? But also widening the spectrum, right? I mean, it's kind of interesting that we talk about Yerushalayim as being Yira Shalem. Some perspective, that's the Samech. It's 360 degrees. I can see it from every side, right? And I can tell the story from the side of every character is benevolent, right? There's so many ways that I could tell the story. The Chalom, right? The dream. I don't know if that hit any spot or resonated to your question, but
Well, one thing that resonated is when you go to the Alshech Shul, you see that all the seats are round in a circle.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And that's just occurred to me. It's like when we were in the desert,
Wow.
all the tribes were around the Mishkan,
Yeah.
because each tribe has equal distance to the Mishkan.
Yeah.
So I know that you do such a thorough research when we do these episodes. Is there any gold mines of Torah that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
Wow. I mean, like I said, I feel like there's just so much in this. I mean, I'm not sure I'm ready to read them yet.
Right.
But I wanted to just, like, as I was preparing, so all of a sudden, Leah's tefillah, her tefillah, don't let me marry an Esav, right, started coming through,
right.
and really feeling into her. It says that Leah means to be weary, not weary. Weary.
Oh, tired.
Tired, exhausted, right? She hasn't even met him yet. She's already exhausted. I mean, she's weary of maybe the long-term effects, right, of the tohu energy, the heaviness, of the being stuck relating on the levels of the lower energy center. It's exhausting.
But she was the most productive of all the mothers.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
She I would say something that the Alshech did touch upon and kept striking me again and again was somehow women healing a place of competition and agreeing that we're in collaboration to create and birth, that we want the same thing. That becomes very, very powerful when women start to collaborate with each other instead of seeing one another as competition, right? Or even competition for love or like elevated things. That's something that we're seeing of. There's a softening, right, of Zachakol, right? In the end, what is it that we're trying to create here? All of us together, but really, right? What kind of a world, with what kind of... It's something that, so you said, yes, I did a deep dive, and something that really struck me was Yaakov removing the Evan from on the Be'er.
Right.
And I really heard that as he's in search of the authentic, vulnerable masculine. Authentic. Tiferet. Right? It's not lopsided to one side or the other. It's mamash in flow. And right? And it's interesting because I kind of see Abraham as being very, right? And Yitzchak being kind of emotionally unavailable, maybe. Right? Maybe just saying. Right? And Yaakov is like, how do I open a new pathway? And chidush. How do I open a chidush? Not what my Saba was, not what my father was, but the chidush of a newer, more integrated, masculine, all the way from his ekev to his rosh, open, and all of that being open, right? And being in love, and also in power, and knowing how to, right, be so present with. Maybe that's something else that I loved about the Vayicha Af. Actually, that they were willing to be so present with each other on a certain level of authenticity and presence. I don't know, but that's just something that really, really struck me, the opening of the heart center this week. That is something I would definitely want, right? The awareness that Torah is living, it's dynamic. And if the masculine, if that happened in the Parasha this week, to Yaakov in response to movement with the Shekhinah, really, then that means that's happening inside every single one of us this week. Where that this is the living Torah.
Right. Amazing. So we just have time for a few questions. If anybody would like to ask any questions, we'd love to hear. Otherwise, I'm going to carry on asking. Reuven, you have a question for it? You good? Ravimio? So, Reva, thank you so much. It was a pleasure again, and I hope that we will learn from this parasha, this idea of Bitachon, and the ultimate trust in Hashem, that His plan is always going to be better than ours.
You know, may I add one thing from Alshech? Because it really jumped out at me, and we forgot to mention it, and it was like one of the strangest pieces to me when I'll try to remember it from memory, but he says, if you look at the things that we put our trust in, that we think is moving our story forward, Rachel had way more of those things that would check the box. Right? She was physically, outwardly beautiful. He wanted to marry her. He, I forget, but he gives this whole list, right? Of if that's why she actually really should have been the first wife. And right? And yet she's not, right? And he brings that piece there, that Leah's tefillah, really, but not the tefillah in that I'm going to get what I want. The tefillah that I'm willing to metamorphosize. I'm willing to change, right? I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm willing to become something new.
Right. And we see that she did whatever it takes. She really did. So with that, I just want to thank you, the audience, for participating in this. And we have another tremendous parasha next week by Shlach. And we have the pleasure of Rabbi Amichai Cohen to discuss that with us. So look forward to seeing you next week. Same time. Thank you.